Hey everyone, Kevin P. McAuliffe here, and I am back again with another Creative Cow tutorial. And in our ongoing look at learning Avid's Media Composer and Symphony, let's keep the Marquee train rolling. And I thought in this tutorial we would talk about creating path text. Now I'm going to show you some very basic but very cool techniques to create some very cool text on paths inside a Marquee that you'll animate inside a Marquee and export for use in your Media Composer and Symphony timeline. Okay, short introduction here. Let's just get into Symphony and let's get started. Okay, so let's Alt-Tab into Avid's Symphony, obviously a Command tab for all of my Mac friends out there. Of course, we're going to navigate up to Clip. We're going to come down to New Title, and we're going to simply select Marquee. Now, what I need to do first of all is I'm just going to switch back to my basic view. I'm going to come into Views here, show me all the buttons. Just move things over here just so we can get things arranged the way that we want. Okay, so I'm going to show you two different path text techniques inside of Marquee. And the first one is going to be, one that we use all the time, which is going to be path text on a spline that we create ourselves. So to do this is very simple. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to use the pen tool right here. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually just going to zoom back a little bit, and you're going to see why I'm going to do this in a second. I'm going to draw this path to be pretty big here, like such. Just a sort of a standard curve that you might have text moving along. And most people think at this point what you're going to do is you're going to select the text tool and you're going to try to click somewhere and you're going to try to type some stuff, and then maybe you'll try to select it and try to attach it to the path. But that's not how this works, because you got to remember right now this line is a spline. It's not a path yet at all until I actually assign it to being a path. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to delete that text that I just created. I'm going to select my spline. What I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate up to Object. I'm going to come right down here towards the bottom. I want to convert shape to path. Now as soon as I do that, you're going to see that this has now changed colors. It's now red. What I'm also going to do here is I'm just going to select the entire thing here, and I'm just going to move it over like such here. Let's just grab it and move it. There we go. Do it the old-fashioned way. If grabbing the mouse and dragging doesn't work, I'm just going to use the right arrow key to slide it over here. There we go. Now the reason I'm doing this is because as soon as I go to type on the path, what's going to happen is that the text is actually going to appear off screen and I'm not going to be able to see it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to hit text here, and you're going to see as soon as I do, I now have the text cursor at the top of the path. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in, "This is text on a path." And what we're going to do now is we're just going to zoom back in here. So we're going to head back up to View. I'm going to come down to Zoom In. There we go. Pretty cool. Now, what most people think is that they're just going to select everything and they're just going to animate this. Now, how we animate text on a path is actually very easy. What we're going to do is we're going to navigate up to Window. We're going to come down to Properties because we want to see the text properties. Now, of course, I always have to make my font impact. There we go. Very cool. Now, remember, I can get in and add things like drop shadows and even edges to this text, and we're going to get back to that in just a second. What I want to do now is just animate this text on the path, and how we do that is right here with the scroll position. The only problem is that once I grab it and start moving it, nothing really happens. Well, maybe it's because I have to select my text and do that. So I'm just going to undo what I just did. We'll just select the text here. I'll select it all, do the same thing, scroll position. Nope, that doesn't work either. And at this point, people get frustrated, start pulling their hair out, start cursing at the application. But you don't need to do that, because it's not that the application isn't working right. It's that, of course, we're not working it right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go back to the text here. Let's just select the text. I'm simply going to, let's do that again here, select the text. I'm going to right-click on it, and you're going to notice that the very first option I have is appropriately enough motion. And you'll see that if I hover the mouse over it, first option, of course, static. The next option is crawl, which is what we want this text to do. We want it to crawl along the path. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set crawl. Now if I come down and I adjust the scroll position here, let me just undo that for 1 second here. Let's make sure we select this properly here. What I'm going to do now is adjust the scroll position. Just going to select everything here. There we go. And we'll adjust the scroll position here, and there's our text on the path, scrolling along exactly the way that we want it to. Now, of course, the only problem is that the text pops off because I don't have this stretched out far enough. There we go. Now you'll see it moves off the screen. Very cool. Maybe even a little bit further because I don't want it to disappear. Now, what's also important to keep in mind is I'm going to slide this way back over there. But for the purposes of what we're doing, this is looking pretty good. So let's position this roughly where we're going to want it to go. That's about good right there. Because I said that there's some other cool things that we can do. I mean, basically to animate this is very simple. All I have to do is, let's set our starting position here. We'll just adjust the scroll position because we're going to want to have it move from the right side to the left side here. And so what we're going to do, of course, is to go simply enough into animation mode. And I think what I'm going to do first of all is let's just make the duration here 10 seconds. 5 seconds I think will be a little bit quick. We want this to be a little bit slower. So I'm going to make that 10 seconds. I'm going to switch my tools to be the basic animation view here. Of course, let's just adjust our view, show all the toolbars here. Very cool. And what we want to do is, of course, turn on animation mode. I also want to see my text window here, so let's come down to properties, show me the text. There we go. And let's just adjust our scroll position here to about there. What we're going to do is come all the way down to the end here. Now you'll see the entire scroll has disappeared. Now, of course, if we want to get in, we want to adjust this, no problem. All I'm going to do is just simply turn animation mode off here. Let's take a look at what is going on with the path here. Actually, it's the text, not the path. It's the scroll position. There we go. Very cool. So let's come in here. Let's remove this. We're actually going to reset this animation back to the way we had it before originally. We're going to reset all the curves, and all we're going to do is just adjust this here. I'm just going to delete this key here. Let's have everything actually start at 0. There we go. You can see that we can actually have it adjust exactly the way we want it to. Now, of course, this is the end keyframe, so we want it to be about there. Let's just adjust the screen here. It's not quite where we want it to be. Right about there. You see how we can adjust these to animate however we want. So let's come back to the beginning here, and you'll see that this is almost doing what we want it to do. Not quite here. So let's just make it do what we want it to do. There we go. I think that's pretty good. So what happens now is it starts there, off the frame, comes in, perfect. Now we might have to adjust this in just a second. Now you're probably wondering, well, what do you mean by that? Well, I'm going to show you. This is, as good as path text is, kind of dull and kind of boring, don't you think? So let's get in and let's adjust this. What we're going to do is we're actually going to make this text 3D, and I'm going to give it a texture, and we're going to rotate this so it comes towards the screen. And I'm not going to adjust any animation because I don't want to have this as an animatable element. It's just going to be the way that it is. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to, first of all, select my text here, and let's just select it here. There we go. Being a little bit tricky here. There we go. Perfect. I'm just going to adjust the size here. There we go. Just to make it a little bit bigger. What I'm also going to do is just adjust the kerning in between each letter, just because when it animates, and you'll see I'm going to have to adjust this just to make sure that it goes off the frame, but I can, of course, can do that right now. There we go. So it's going to start off the frame. Let's just make sure it ends off the frame here. Not quite. So again, simple adjustment to the keyframe. Perfect. So, off the frame, on, and then off again. Perfect. But like I said, what we want to do is we want to spice this up a little bit. So, what I'm going to do here is, again, I'm just going to select everything. I'm going to come back up to the window because I want to come down to properties. And what I want to do is I want to see the transform properties, because what I want to do is rotate everything about 45 degrees. Now, you'll see again, we're going to have to adjust this, just to adjust the starting point so that it's going to be off the frame again here. Well, let's just close this window here. Make sure this starts off frame like such. Perfect. And make sure it goes all the way off the frame, which it doesn't, but it does now. So now take a look at this. Now we have this text that sort of comes off in the distance and comes towards us. But again, I'm going to take this to another level, because what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to come back up to window, I'm going to come back down to properties, and what I want to do is I want to see, I believe it's the effects properties, of course. There we go. Let's just extrude this text. Maybe we'll make it about, I don't know, 25 maybe. And of course, remember from the previous tutorial, we also need to enable lighting. Now you'll see the light is actually not in the right position, but that's not a big deal because I can also always adjust it however I want. And what I want to do here is just see what happens when the text gets over here. Still looking good, still looking good. Very nice. Now last but certainly not least, I'm going to add a texture to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch back to basic mode here. There we go. And you'll see inside the styles library here, I could just come over to textures. And why don't we take, I don't know, maybe a red brick here. Make sure we select everything here. We'll just take red brick. There we go. And look what I've just done. I've actually just gone in, and instead of it just being normal and boring path text, what I now have, and let's just make sure we adjust the window here just so we can see everything. There we go here. Is we now have some very cool, we'll just switch back to basic animation so I can adjust my timeline here. Some very cool, if I hit play, 3D extruded text moving from a distance closer to the camera on and off the frame. Okay, so now what do we do to get this into Symfony to work with it? Well, much like you'll remember from the previous tutorial, what we're going to do is simply navigate up. I'm going to say File, Save All to Bin. You'll see that this is going to start saving out. Again, super lightning quick. For an animation that's, 10 seconds long, this is rendering very, very quickly. Now you'll remember that when we get back into Symfony, it's going to do its 4 passes. It's going to do the RGB pass, then it's going to go back through and do the alpha passes to get this element ready for us to work with. So again, I'm just going to call this cool. Let's make sure we actually select it here. Cool path text. Sure, why don't we just save it back into sequences, even though it's not really being too organized, but that's okay. Again, you'll see creating the RGB very quick. Then it's going to go through and create me the alpha passes. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to drop it in over top of some footage here. And like I said, you can get in and, like I said, spice things up. Add drop shadows in to make this text look like it has actual depth from the background. In this case, we're just going to drop it right in over top, just so you can see how this is going to work. But because you'll be working on this on your own time, you'll know how much time you'll have to add all those little extra bells and whistles to really take your titles to the next level. Okay, there's our title right there. Our title also appears in our window here. There it is, just like such. And let's take a clip here. Let's take, again, motocross. Let's find a clip that's about 10 seconds long here. Sure. I'll select the entire clip here, into sequences, of course. Let's take our text here. Just add a new layer, Control and Y in Windows, Command and Y on the Mac. Let's take this, drop it in. Of course, it's only 10 seconds. So we'll just take the rest of this out. And what do we have here? Let's make sure we cut that out. What do we have? Some very cool path text. 3D. Rendered out lightning quick out of the Marquee title tool. Very cool. Okay, so one last thing that I want to show you before I wrap up this tutorial is another cool path text technique that we can do that's actually not only going to use path text, but it's going to use an element from Boris Continuum Complete. Now, why would I use Boris Continuum Complete? Well, the reason that I am is because for all of you Symfony users out there, of course, when you purchase Symfony, you get a copy of Boris Continuum Complete 8. That is why I'm showing it to you. If you didn't get Boris Continuum Complete 8, you need to check the email you received when you purchased Symfony, because you're going to find links to the downloads and the unlock codes for Boris Continuum Complete 8. So make sure you download it and start using it right away. Okay, so let's go back into Marquee. So again, we're going to create a new title. I'm going to say Marquee. And Marquee is actually already open here. So let's just close Marquee here, just because I want to do a fresh Marquee opening here. So we'll just say new title. Marquee, of course. Okay, again, what we're going to do here is I'm just going to turn on my saves here. Let's just go back. We'll just view all the toolbars. Very cool. Take this, move it around like such. And for the purposes of what we're doing, I'm just going to actually go back, and I'll put this back at 10 seconds the way I had it before. But you can obviously make this however long you want. So make it 10 seconds. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a circle, just like such. I'm going to hold Shift to make sure that it snaps to create a perfect circle. Now you'll see that's filled in with white. Now what we're going to do is we're going to, again, navigate up to Object. We're going to come down to Convert Shape to Path. We're going to select our text, and of course we're going to call this BMXing. We'll select it all. Maybe we'll make it a bit bigger. Maybe we'll make it about 120. That's pretty cool. Of course, again, as always, Impact. I think that might be a little bit too big. Why don't we make it about 95? That's better. Okay, well, what we're going to do now is put 5 spaces in between BMXing. And what we'll now do is paste it in, paste it in, paste it in, paste it in. And I think that's pretty darn close. I don't think we're going to get it any closer than that. Now what I could do is shrink this down a bit, save it out, and do the animation outside of Marquee, but I'm not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to position this as if we're going to be using it as an element. And I'm just going to bring it down, and we'll just bring it over here. Again, sometimes it likes to be tricky, so what we're going to do here is, I think what we'll do is we'll come back up here. I'll come to Properties. If it ever gives you trouble, you can always just use Transform here to adjust the XY position. That's not too bad. But why don't we animate this first, actually? Just undo what we just did here. Get it back to where we had it. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so what I'm going to do is animate this first. So again, first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn animation on. I'm going to leave this frame the way that it is, and we're going to adjust again. Come back to Properties. I'm going to come back to Transform. We're going to adjust the rotation, and I believe it's the Z rotation that we're going to be adjusting. That's it. That is what we want to adjust. So what we're going to do is adjust the Z rotation here, and just for the purposes of what we're doing, I think we're going to rotate this quite a lot here. Not Z scale. There we go. We're just going to rotate this around like such. And what we now have here, if we come back, is we just have BMXing moving in a circle. Now, one thing I also want to point out is that we do have the ability to add motion blur when we render things out. Now, what's important to keep in mind is that once you apply motion blur to anything, it's going to obviously bog down your renders. You're still going to get pretty fast renders or exports out of Marquee, but obviously keep in mind you could be looking to 2 to 3, sometimes even 5 times as long to export something than you might be accustomed to if you're not using motion blur. Now, to add motion blur to anything, you can simply go up to Render, come down to Options, and you can see it right here, Enable Motion Blur. So if you want it, by all means, add it. What I'm going to do is just say Cancel, and with animation mode turned off, we're just going to reposition this element here, like such, sort of about there. So it's going to be happening in the lower right-hand corner. Very cool. Okay? So again, what we're going to do is we're going to say File. We're going to say Save All to Bin. You'll see again we're going to get a super fast export from Marquee. Part 1 of 2 as always. Obviously the export from Marquee. Part 2 being the rendering of the element for use in Media Composer and Symphony. And what we're going to do is once we drop this into our timeline, I'm actually going to do a transfer mode to this. Now, we don't have access to transfer modes inside of them. We'll just call this circle path rotation. Say save. Now, like I was saying, we don't have access to transfer modes inside of Media Composer and Symphony by default. We actually need a third-party plugin to do it. And like I said, in this case, I'm only using Boris Continuum Complete because as a Symphony purchaser, you get it included. Now, if you only purchase Media Composer, you can actually do this inside of Avid Effects. So you do have a couple of options when you're doing this. Okay, so once this is done, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the animation we're rendering out, I'm going to drop it right back in over top of this shot here. So you'll see, here we go. Very cool. It's going to appear in my bin. There we go. BMXing, very cool. Hit T on the keyboard on both back and Windows to select the entire clip. Just drop it right back in over top like such. What do we have here? BMXing, rotating around. Now, of course, motion blur would make this look a little bit better, but for the purposes of timing in our tutorial, we're not going to add that in there. Okay, so now that that's done, what I want to do is I want to add the transfer mode effect, which is called Composite from Boris Continuum Complete 8. And of course, how we find that effect is by hitting Control and 8 on Windows, Command and 8 on the Mac to call up the effects palette. Now, for all of you Media Composer editors, if you have it installed, you're going to see Avid Effects obviously located right at the top of the effects palette. Now, for all you Symphony users, if you don't have Avid Effects, you'll see BCC 8 right at the top. Now, of course, like I said, we're talking really about Symphony right now. So for all you Symphony users out there, what you're going to want to do is navigate down to Key and Blend, and you're going to see the composite effect located right here. What I'm going to do is take that effect, I'm going to drag it and drop it down onto the title. Now, as soon as I let it go, you're going to see the background disappears and my text gets all weird looking. Well, it's because I haven't actually gone in and done the setup that I need to do to apply this to a title. So what I'm going to do, again, hit Shift and Y on my keyboard. That's my shortcut for effects mode. Obviously, again, if you don't have effects mode mapped, you can find it right here or right here at the top of the composer or of the timeline. What I'm going to do now is navigate over here to the effects editor, and what I want to do is I want to come down to the title matte section, and all I'm going to do is say apply to title matte. And as soon as I do, you can see we now have a very cool transfer mode. Now the question is, what transfer mode am I looking at? Well, the transfer mode that I'm looking at is actually hard light, and you're going to see right here that what's happening is that this element, the title, is being mixed with the first layer below, which is obviously my footage. And the apply mode is a hard light, but I could get in and apply whatever transfer mode I want right in here. But I'm pretty happy with hard light, so all I'm going to do is I'm just going to close the effects editor here. I now have to render this effect out. You'll see it's turned blue, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to render this out. We'll just send it back to the Y drive here. You'll see the render is actually really quick. Again, just a little bit shy of real time here. And once it's done, what we're going to do is just step out of effects mode, head back to the beginning, hit play, and you'll see we now have a very cool path text element that was animated, created and animated inside a Marquee with a little bit of extra flair added with Boris Continuum Complete 8 that comes with your purchase of Avid Symphony. So if you have any questions, you have any comments, or you have any tutorial requests, you can send them to kevinpmcauliffe@gmail.com. This has been Kevin P. McAuliffe. Thanks a lot for watching.